My brother stood beneath the chandeliers of the Sonoma Crest ballroom, champagne flute raised, smirking like the world had already been signed over to him. "Mom's giving me the hotel shares." He bragged loudly enough for the room to hear. 40%! Legacy leadership, you know. The guests applauded. Investors nodded. My mother beamed. I stood among them, silent, watching the golden boy claim a crown built on lies. And when I finally opened my mouth to speak, just one quiet sentence, Aiden whipped around so fast the microphone screeched. "What?" For the first time in 34 years, he wasn't performing. He was afraid. "My name is Camilla Reyes, 34, Director of Financial Operations for Lombardi Crest Resorts, and, if you ask my parents, the dependable one." Translation: the daughter who did every unglamorous thing required to keep our 40-year luxury hotel empire afloat while the rest of the family posed for magazine covers. I'm also newly single and, for the first time in my life, learning how to live without trying to fix everything around me. The Lombardi Crest legacy started with my grandparents, two immigrants who turned a single vineyard inn into a glittering brand known across wine country. My parents expanded it, added spas, retreats, destination weddings, hillside villas. Aiden grew up believing the empire was his birthright. I grew up learning the payroll system before I learned how to parallel park. He was crowned future CEO before he could legally drink. I was handed color-coded binders and told to support him. But what no one at that gala knew, what my brother certainly didn't know, was that the empire he boasted about had been rotting from the inside for years. Not from poor luck or bad markets. From decisions my parents made quietly, desperately, and recklessly, while feeding the illusion that everything was thriving. They treated the brand like a dynasty. And me? Like the bookkeeper who wouldn't dare question royalty. I found the first red flag 2 months before the gala, a minor discrepancy in a vendor invoice, a missing signature, a strange uptick in overseas withdrawals. It should have been nothing, but something about the pattern tugged at me. So I dug deeper. What I found wasn't a crack, it was a sinkhole. Falsified invoices tied to non-existent contractors. Expansion costs inflated by triple their actual amount. A $9.2 million loan secured with a signature that wasn't mine, but an excellent forgery of it. If one payment defaulted, the debt would transfer directly to me. To me. My parents had bet the entire failing expansion on a signature they never asked for because they assumed I would stay silent. Aiden, meanwhile, strutted around telling everyone he was about to inherit half the kingdom. I realized then that I had two choices: stay quiet and let my brother inherit a burning empire that would eventually take me down with it, or tell the truth, every uncomfortable, explosive piece of it. The Winter Legacy Gala was supposed to be a celebration. Live band, glimmering lights, 600 investors, wine flowing like water. Aiden rehearsed his acceptance speech for weeks. My mother commissioned commemorative champagne bottles with his initials printed in gold foil. He thought the night would end with applause. He didn't know it would end with his life coming apart in real time. And all it would take was me speaking first. I didn't set out to expose anyone. I wasn't hunting for scandal. I was doing what I always did, cleaning up whatever numbers the family didn't want to look at. But the deeper I dug, the more the facade peeled away, like sunburnt paint on a vineyard fence. The first document I found was a contractor invoice, $214,000 to a company in Barcelona. I remembered the company name from years ago, a small design group my father adored. Except they'd closed their doors in 2019. The date on the invoice? 2023. I stared at the numbers for a long minute. Then I pulled the next invoice. And the next. all fake. Someone had created a string of phantom payments tied to a global expansion that never existed. The money had gone somewhere, it just hadn't gone into construction. And the deeper I followed the trail, the uglier it became. The $9.2 million loan was the final blow. It sat in a folder labeled Confidential Hold Expansion Phase 4. A loan my parents secured through a private investor group using a personal guarantee. My personal guarantee, my name, my information. A signature that matched mine almost perfectly, except the flourish on the R was too sharp. My hand never flicked that way. The forgery was impressive, not perfect. I called my parents into the office, printed copies spread neatly across the conference table. When they walked in, the air shifted instantly. My father stiffening, my mother bracing herself like she'd been caught somewhere she shouldn't be. "What is this?" I asked. My mother offered a sigh so delicate, it could have been mistaken for elegance. "Oh, Camilla, you take everything so literally." "That's my signature," I said, pointing to the page, "or someone pretending to be me." "We needed the loan," my father muttered, rubbing the bridge of his nose. The European expansion hit delays. Investors were losing patience. "You forged my name," I said quietly. "We borrowed your stability," my mother corrected, as though the rephrasing softened the crime. "You're the responsible one. If your brother had signed, no lender on earth would have approved it." My stomach nodded. "You planned to let Aiden announce his inheritance while saddling me with $9 million of debt?" "That debt will disappear once the expansion succeeds," she replied. "But it isn't succeeding," I said. "It's drowning." The room fell silent. My parents exchanged a look I'd seen before, tight nervousness masked by practiced poise. The look they used whenever a deal collapsed or a scandal threatened the brand. Only this time, the threat was me. "Camilla," my father finally said, "this family has trusted you with our books for years. You're the one who keeps this place running. Why question that now?" Because they had crossed a line so deeply etched into my conscience, it felt like a scar. Because for the first time, I realized I wasn't fixing mistakes. I was enabling them. I stepped back from the table. "I won't sign off on any expansion," I said. "Not 1 cent. The numbers aren't real. The invoices aren't real. The empire isn't what you're pretending it is." My mother's face tightened. "You don't get to make that choice," she said. "Your brother is taking majority leadership. You should be grateful he's willing to keep you on the team at all." There it was, the truth beneath every polite smile. Aiden was destined, and I was tolerated. The Winter Gala approached like a storm cloud, dark, heavy, unmentioned yet understood. Everyone in the family carried themselves with exaggerated grace that month, pretending nothing was wrong while quietly betting the future on a lie. Aiden practiced his acceptance speech in the mirror. My parents ordered gold-embossed invitations. Investors RSVP'd with excitement. The band rehearsed. The caterers stocked cellars with vintage wine. And beneath it all, the debt swelled like a hidden fault line, waiting for the slightest pressure to crack and swallow everything. I tried to sleep the night before the gala, but the thought kept circling, sharp and relentless. If I stayed silent, the lie would become truth. If I spoke, the truth would become war. And war, it seemed, was the only thing left to save me. The Lombardi Crest Winter Legacy Gala was designed to impress even the most jaded investor. Towering floral arrangements, violinists stationed along the staircase, golden chandeliers dripping like molten light. Guests floated in, wearing black-tie confidence, sipping reserve vintages older than I was. On the surface, our family empire gleamed. But beneath all that shine was rot, and tonight it would finally surface. Aiden stood on stage in a tailored midnight blue suit, radiating entitlement from every pore. Cameras flashed as he grinned, whispering to a cluster of investors, "Mom's giving me the shares tonight, 40%. Official. Camilla gets bookkeeping or something." People laughed. Of course they did. My mother's voice boomed over the speakers. "Everyone, please take your seats. Tonight, we honor our future." She gestured toward Aiden like he was an award she'd polished. My chest tightened, not with fear this time, but clarity. The truth was no longer a burden. It was a weapon, and I wasn't afraid to use it. Aiden strutted forward, lifted the mic, and launched into the speech he had practiced for weeks. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute privilege to announce..." I stepped onto the stage. The mic picked up the soft click of my heels. Aiden froze, eyebrows lifting in indignation. "Camilla," he hissed, "what are you doing? You're ruining the..." I spoke into the microphone, calm and cold. "I'd like to present the financial position of Lombardi Crest Resorts." A murmur rippled through the ballroom. Aiden leaned toward me, whisper shouting, "Get off the stage, this is my night." But it was too late. I clicked the remote in my hand. The towering LED screen behind us flickered, then lit up in glaring white. Document 1, forged signature. $9.2 million personal guarantee. My name forged with precision. My identity tethered to a failing empire. Gasps spread like wildfire. Chairs scraped. Someone dropped a champagne glass. Aiden's face drained of color. "Turn that off!" He barked at the tech crew. But they were frozen. Click. Document 2. Falsified invoices. Non-existent contractors. Click. Document 3. Expansion costs. Triple inflated. Click. Document 4. Projected insolvency dates. 19 days ahead. The ballroom was silent except for the echo of numbers condemning themselves. My mother's hands trembled. My father stared at the screen like it was written in a language he'd never learned. Aiden lunged toward me and grabbed the mic. "You're lying! This is taken out of context." I stepped back, unshaken. "These are the books you never bothered to read." An investor in the front row stood. "Is this true?" My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. Aiden stammered. My father wiped his forehead with a napkin that immediately soaked through. The silence became a verdict. Then Aiden's fiancée, dressed in gold sequins and ambition, walked onto the stage. She stared at the documents, her eyes narrowing at the forged signature. Slowly, she slipped the engagement ring off her finger. "Aiden," she said, voice icy, "I'm not going down with you." She placed the ring in his palm and stepped away, heels clicking like a countdown. Investors began whispering urgently. Emails buzzed, phone calls started, a few headed straight for the exits. The ballroom dissolved from glamour into chaos in seconds. Aiden turned on me, voice cracking. "You did this! You destroyed our family!" "No," I said calmly. "You destroyed the empire. I'm just revealing what you hoped no one would see." Security rushed toward the stage, not for me, but to protect the equipment as furious partners surged forward demanding explanations. My mother finally found her voice. "How could you embarrass us like this, Camilla?" I held her gaze. "How could you gamble everything, including me, and expect silence?" She recoiled as if the truth burned. And maybe it did. Within minutes, the gala fell apart. Music cut, lights dimmed, investors storming out with contracts clutched in anger. Aiden stood center stage, shaking, shouting half-formed excuses no one believed. The kingdom they built over 40 years collapsed not with a quiet sigh, but with a public shatter heard across the entire valley. And I, the daughter they underestimated, the sister they overlooked, stood beneath the falling crown and refused to pick it up. The morning after the gala, news outlets across Sonoma County buzzed with headlines like falling embers. Lombardi Crest Resorts implodes overnight. Private expansion fraud under investigation. Heir apparent under scrutiny after gala meltdown. What had taken my grandparents 50 years to build collapsed in less than 12 hours. Frozen accounts, emergency board meeting, mass resignations, contract cancellations hitting my parents' inbox before sunrise. Creditors circling like vultures over a carcass that was still warm. I woke to 23 missed calls from my mother, 14 from my father, and 6 frantic texts from Aiden that swung between rage and begging. I didn't read them, not yet, not when my hands still shook from the weight of everything I'd carried and everything I'd finally put down. When I arrived at headquarters later that afternoon, the lobby was quiet. Too quiet. The receptionist, who had watched my family parade through for decades like royalty, gave me a tight, sympathetic smile. "They're waiting for you upstairs," she said. Of course they were. My parents were in the conference room, papers spread everywhere, eyes red from either anger or panic, probably both. Aiden sat slumped in a chair, hair unkempt, yesterday's bravado gone like smoke in the wind. My mother spoke first. "Camilla, what you did was unforgivable." I didn't sit. "Mom, what you did was illegal." My father slammed his fist on the table. "We could have worked this out privately." I met his glare with decades of swallowed objections. "You tried to sign my life away without asking. You used my name to cover your failures. And you expected me to smile on stage while Aiden accepted shares of an empire built on lies." Aiden looked up, eyes bloodshot. "I didn't know about the debt," he whispered. "I didn't know about any of it." "You didn't want to know," I replied, "because knowing comes with responsibility." Silence settled heavily over the room. Lawyers arrived. So did auditors. So did investigators. The next week was a blur. Subpoenas issued, expansion plans fully shut down, hotel assets frozen pending investigation. The glamorous Lombardi Crest brand that once hosted politicians, celebrities, and weddings overlooking the vineyards now stood on the brink of bankruptcy auction. My mother filed for separation 2 weeks later, blaming my father for the forged documents. My father blamed her for pushing extravagant expansions. Aiden blamed me for humiliating him in front of the world. And yet, deep down, he knew humiliation wasn't the fatal blow. The truth was. Meanwhile, I took unpaid leave, not because I was forced to, because I needed to breathe. I spent long mornings walking the quiet winery trails, cool air brushing my skin, sun warming my shoulders. For once, I felt no pressure to perform, no weight of numbers on my spine. Just breath, just sky, just space. One afternoon, a board member who had resigned after the gala called me. "You saved us," she said. "It doesn't feel like it now, but transparency is the only path forward. When the dust settles, if you want to lead the restructuring, the position is yours." I stared across the vineyard fields, rows of vines stretching like threads of a story that wasn't finished. "I'll think about it," I told her, because for the first time in my life, leadership was not something I had to fight my brother for. It wasn't a spotlight I had to step into or a role I had to apologize for wanting. It was mine because I had earned it, by telling the truth when everyone else tried to bury it. Weeks later, as the empire officially entered restructuring, Aiden sent a final message. "Why did you have to do it like that?" I typed slowly, deliberately. "Because it was the only way any of you would listen." I didn't expect him to reply. He didn't. Sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it isn't a cheer or a crown or applause. Sometimes it's simply the moment you realize you no longer owe anyone your silence. As I watched the last sunset of the season streak across the valley, warm and gold and unburdened, I understood something. Empires fall. Families fracture. Truth detonates. But sometimes, in the rubble of a collapsing legacy, the daughter who was never supposed to inherit anything finally finds what was hers all along: a voice sharp enough to break a dynasty, a spine strong enough to stand alone, and a future clean, honest, and entirely her own,